A couple of weeks back, I posted a video that was the Oppo Find N5 versus the Galaxy Z Fold 7, and now that I've got my hands on the Honor Magic V5, a lot of you were asking for basically that video, but between those two phones, the Fold 7 and the Honor Magic V5, and that's what we're going to do here in this video, with one big difference between that video and this video. In that video, I tried to be wherever I could be, as objective as I could be. For instance, in that video, I awarded the Find N5 the category for screens, even though I personally prefer the screens on the Galaxy Z Fold 7. And I did this because it had more wins in more subcategories, things like PPI and resolution, things that don't matter to me. I don't think matter to most people once you hit a certain threshold. But what does matter is brightness, and the Z Fold 7 was brighter, so I prefer that screen. We're not going to be playing that game in this video. I'm just going to go through this and tell you what I like. So just like in that video, we're going to go through this sort of categorically, and we're going to start off with the hardware. And honestly, this is immediately a pretty interesting conversation. I know that one of the first things that people immediately start asking with these phones is which one is thinner, which one is thicker. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really care anymore. This was a fun little conversation to have for a while, but we have gotten to the point that we are talking about fractions of a millimeter. It is irrelevant which one is thinner. They are both extremely thin, and the same thing goes for which one is lighter. They are both about the weight of a standard slab phone, and unless you put them down on a scale, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. Now, I have added a ring and a skin to my Z Fold 7, so that does add a few grams of weight, but they're both exceptionally thin, and they are both exceptionally light for a folding phone. Now, one place where they do have some pretty significant differences is with the hinge, the way that both of these hinges feel. Many people have complained that the Z Fold 7 is hard to open, and I'll definitely agree that compared to a lot of other foldables, it definitely is. And I'll kind of explain to you how this hinge feels. So the initial opening pressure is pretty high, and then it gets to about right there, and then it kind of wants to stop. The magnets let go, but then the hinge is very stiff right there, and it requires quite a bit of force to open this thing up, and then that force lessens and lessens and lessens until it eventually, at about this spot here, kind of just pops the rest of the way open. The Honor Magic V5 is completely different. It is quite easy to open from the very beginning. There is no pop and then like a grab feeling where the hinge kind of kicks in. It's really not there. It just opens smoothly the entire way. It begins to get even easier about here, and then it gets maybe a little bit stiffer before kind of popping the rest of the way open. This device is much easier to open than the Galaxy Z Fold 7. Now, what does that mean in terms of durability and things like that? Your guess is as good as mine. Both of these phones are rated to, if I'm not mistaken, 500,000 folds. It's always such a pain trying to get a phone to focus looking at a crease on one of these foldable phones, but you can see the Z Fold 7 there, and you can see the Honor Magic V5 there. Lost focus already. Ultimately, this is one of those things where I think we've gotten to a really pretty solid place on both of these devices. They're both quite shallow, and they're both quite narrow. And while I know that there will be people who will probably still be upset about the crease, I just don't think it's a big deal for most people. Based on what I'm seeing right now, I think that Honors might be a little bit harder to see. But I think it's also worth pointing out that I've definitely opened and closed my Z Fold 7 more than I've opened and closed my Honor Magic V5. They're very similar. We'll give a slight edge, though, to the Magic V5 when it comes to the crease. Both of these phones do also have fairly tall camera bumps, but the camera bump on the Magic V5 I think kind of dwarfs basically any camera bump I have ever seen on any device, and the reason for that is because they are packing in some pretty darn good camera hardware overall. And I think it's also worth mentioning that the Z Fold 7 is IP48, whereas this is IP58 and 59, so a little bit better when it comes to ingress protection, water, dust, things like that. So while both of these devices do feel absolutely fantastic, they're both such well-made feeling devices, I think that I probably have to give the nod to the Magic V5 in terms of overall build quality, but man, is it extremely close. I think what kind of puts me over the top is maybe the IP rating and the visibility of the crease. Everything else is just so razor thin. So let's talk about the screens. And I know that this is a place where people are going to immediately be talking about the width of these two devices. So we're just going to measure it and see how far apart they are. Because for whatever reason, people seem to think that this device is a lot thinner than it actually is. But when you measure it, it turns out that it's usually pretty darn close to the other phones. So we're looking at, I'll do it down here so that you can see that actually, about 65 millimeters wide. You come over here and you are, hey, how about that? About 66 millimeters wide. So again, there's like this weird optical illusion about this device where everybody thinks that it's like weirdly narrow. It's not. Like, it's the same width across as these other phones. So with that out of the way, I do need to tell you that I do have an anti-reflective coating screen protector on the Z Fold 7. So you definitely have to just keep that in mind as we're looking at things. If you see glare on one, not the other, that is why. There would normally be glare here. So here's a big thing that I'm trying to just get as a point across to people. We have a tendency in the tech community to just look at the rated nits of brightness on screens and determine which screen is going to be brighter. And that's just not what we need to be doing in 2025. We should have learned better by now. Honor says this screen can hit 5,000 nits of peak brightness. Samsung says this screen can hit 2,600 nits of peak brightness. But when you use them both in the real world, you take them outside in particular on a warm day, there is no comparison. The Z Fold 6 is the brighter screen, inner and outer. Now, when we talk about resolution and PPI, which I think is a fairly relevant thing in this particular conversation, the Honor Magic V5 has higher pixel density and higher resolution on the inner screen, but Samsung has higher PPI and higher resolution on the outer screen. In both cases, it's very, very close, and unless you're taking a microscope to these screens, you're not going to be able to see the difference. They both are high refresh rate and all of that good stuff. I mentioned glare earlier, and on the inner screen, there definitely is a bit of a gap there. The Z Fold 7 is very, very reflective. And while the Magic V5 is also reflective, it's not quite as bad. Don't get me wrong, this is not the S25 Ultra's glare-resistant coating or whatever it is they're calling it, but it is a little bit less glary than the Samsung phone. The biggest thing for me, guys, the most important thing about a screen, and it's not even close for me, is the brightness. And the Z Fold 7 wins that by such a large margin that I don't think anything else is a big enough deal to overcome that. So for me, for screens, it's the Z Fold 7. When it comes to speakers, I did praise Honor for having a speaker up here and a speaker down here, which means that no matter how you're holding the device, you do have stereo sound, which I am a really, really big fan of. But we need to know exactly what these speakers sound like. So we're going to do another quick speaker test using some music I'm going to stream over from my computer. We're going to go with the Z Fold 7 first. And now over here to the Magic V5. Man, this is a tough one for me because I feel like the Z Fold 7 has a bit more pleasing of an audio profile, but the V5 is getting louder, and that is like the most important thing we just talked about with the screens, right? There's some other factors, and those things do matter, but when they're close, they don't matter too much. Brightness is the most important thing by a country mile. Volume is very, very important for me on these speakers. I want to be able to just set my phone down and play some audio while I'm, doing the laundry or whatever it might be, and be able to hear that over whatever else is going on. And because of that additional volume and how relatively close they are in the overall pleasantness of the audio profile, I think we got to give speakers to that Magic V5. Oh yeah, and like I said, it's stereo no matter how you hold it. So yeah, I think I got to go Honor. And let's go ahead and give another victory to the Honor Magic V5 because we're going to be talking about battery life and charging. It's not even really worth a long conversation. Now, I've told you guys repeatedly I'm fine with the battery life and charging speed on the Galaxy Z Fold 7. It makes it through the day for me just fine. Typically, 5-6 hours of screen on time, and I can go to bed with 10 or 15% of my battery. With this phone, with a 5800 milliamp hour battery versus the 4400 milliamp hour battery over here, I'm going to bed with, again, 5 or 6 hours of screen on time, but maybe I've got 30, 35%, 40% of my battery left, depending on the usage, how much time I've spent on Wi-Fi and things like that. And then, of course, the charging speed. This is going to charge so much faster. This is a 25 watt maximum charge, and I think that the V5 is, like 67 or 80 or something like that. It's obscenely fast. So, this has the better battery and charging. When it comes to multitasking, there is a lot to cover here. They both do a lot of really cool things, and they both do it very well. So obviously with both of these devices, you can open up an application. We'll go over to light mode on both of these because I do think that it shows up a bit better on camera. We have the Play Store open on both. They both do have a taskbar that you can pull up to drag another app onto the screen, and they both have an app drawer to get to the rest of their apps on. Try that one more time. There we go. So we're going to just grab, I guess we'll just grab something obvious like Feedly. We're going to press and hold, and we can drag it onto the screen, and there is our second application. We'll come over here and do the same thing. I really do like the animations that Honor has. There's, like I've said before, like a lot more of a flourish. I just accidentally opened up a floating window instead, so let's try that again. You can see that that does look very similar. And let me just quickly say, I'm not going to be able to cover every single aspect of both of these phones multitasking, okay? This is going to be fairly detailed, but yet still a little bit of a broad overview. If you want to bring in a third application, you can absolutely do that on both. We'll just do CX File Explorer, and you can see on the Z Fold, it's going to stay on the screen. It's just going to be sort of a smaller square like that. Over here on the Honor Magic V5, it's a little bit different. It's going to be another vertical app, but it's going to be off the screen. It's going to work like this. You can just kind of tap to slide things back and forth. Let's grab this application and turn it into a floating window, and we'll do the same over here. I should be able to grab this and drag it somewhere, release to be a floating window. There we go. And you can see here that both can do this quite well. You can move this floating window around. However, on the V5, it can only be resized but not reshaped. Samsung gives you much more flexibility with their floating windows. If we close both of these floating windows, I will point out that both of them do have this 90-10 split thing, which is I just messed it up on the Honor Magic V5, but it's just like this, where you can jump back and forth between those two applications. We'll go ahead and grab it over here as well, just to show it to you. If I drag it over to about here, there we go. So it's the same kind of thing, except, okay, I need to expand this over here. That is another thing that they do that is similar to OnePlus devices. You can have it be expanded or shrunk down. I do also really like on the Honor Magic V5 the way that this works. Let me shrink both of these down. They really need to make that shrink expand thing an option in the handle up here. That is something that they need to do like immediately, because that's a really annoying way to have to do that. You can grab an application and throw it away and then just see your home screen and then grab a different application. If you tap on it, it's just going to open it up straight into that split screen view. So I can toss this away and I can grab another app. I really like that feature a lot. But something that I've really grown to enjoy on the Z Fold 7 as a sort of replacement for that is just using your two-finger swipe in to quickly swap out this application as well. It works, just about as well. It is different. It's a different approach, and I do like just the animation of tossing the app away, but you kind of get to the same place at the end of the day. But let's be real for a second. I feel like it's fairly obvious that I am really like nitpicking, trying to find something that stands out between these two devices that would make this decision easier. So what I'm going to do instead of doing that, which I think that the picture that's painting is that they're both really good at multitasking. What I'm going to ask myself is, I'm going to have to get some work done where I'm going to be split screening. Which one am I going to reach for? Which phone do I want to use for multitasking? And my answer is going to be the Galaxy Z Fold 7. And it's not because it is overwhelmingly better. It is because it is excellent, and it is predictable, it is precise, and it is flexible in particular when it comes to those floating windows. This is a razor thin category, but I'm just going to go with my gut here and say it's the Fold 7. But then we need to talk about software in general. A lot of people have this expectation that the Honor Magic V5's software is just bad. And I've heard that from a lot of people, and maybe that was the case before, but I don't think that's the case at all. I actually think that the software suite here is very, very good. My problem with it is that it is very, very different, and not just different from Samsung, different from every other Android device I've ever used. And this is, I think, a great example of that. You've got your split control center notification shade thing going on, and that's fine. You can do that on your Samsung device, but the difference is you can't merge them on this phone. They are the way they are, and there's nothing. What the heck was that? Did you see that? There's like a line. I drew like a line or something there. You cannot merge these. You are, as I said in my review, I just did it again. What is that? What is happening? You are, like I said in my review, stuck in iPhone land. While editing this, it became quite clear what that was. They have a feature called, I think it's Magic Window, and you trigger it with a knuckle, and you're able to draw on your screen, and it will grab that portion of the screen, and you can quickly share it. I think maybe it was the angle I was at or something. It thought my finger was a knuckle, so it was trying to trigger this magic window thing. And even on this screen, you're just gonna see things that are just weird to me. Like when I go to edit this, edit shortcut switch. I'm just like, what does that mean? Oh, that's just how you edit your little quick settings. Why does it say shortcut switch? And then down here, show magic ring, tap to start magic ring. Like, okay, this is some Honor ID something. If you want to add a widget, you don't add widgets, you add cards, because they don't want to call them widgets, but they are widgets, but they say cards on the first screen. It's just strange the way that some of these things are laid out. By default, when you set this thing up, you don't even have an app drawer. They want you to use it basically like an iPhone, with every icon being on your screen. I've also had issues with the gesture opening and closing the app drawer for some reason as well. You can kind of see a little bit here, like some of the ways that the gestures are tuned on this device are just weirdly inconsistent to me. Stuff like this really does start to drive me a little bit crazy over time. And part of me wants to think that it's got to be some level of, muscle memory just being different. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's the way that things are tuned. I come over here and I just don't understand sometimes what I'm doing wrong on this phone. I'm sure I could devote the time and this would feel like home to me, but it doesn't feel like home to me at all. I can use an Oppo phone, a OnePlus phone, a Pixel phone, a Samsung phone, and feel comfortable. This phone, I just don't feel comfortable with it. I never feel like I'm just in a flow. There's always something that's going to happen that's going to make me frustrated. It's going to confuse me. There are plenty of other things as well. I do prefer Samsung's desktop mode DeX over what Honor has. I think that Honor's camera application is strangely cluttered with lots of options that I am absolutely never going to use, and sometimes they default to like this little action mode whenever I launch it that restricts my zoom level until I turn it off, and I don't know why sometimes it's on and sometimes it's not on. Samsung has modes and routines, which I have over the last month or so I've come to greatly rely upon. There's a lot of reasons why I do prefer One UI over Magic OS. So that category does go to the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7. So right now we have Honor winning build quality, speakers, and battery. I have Samsung winning screens, multitasking, and software. I don't think that should be super surprising, but honestly, a lot of these categories have been incredibly close. You might catch me on a different day in a different mood and they might change, but now we need to talk about the camera. And this is a place where I think most of you would expect, based on the camera hardware with that enormous camera bump, for Honor to run away with things. But as I've talked about already numerous times, camera processing is extremely important. And that makes this category also just crazy close. Let's break it down by lens, sensor, and also photo versus video. The primary sensors on both of these phones are their strongest sensors as far as I'm concerned. They are both very, very good, and they're both going to take extremely detailed shots that are, I think, quite similar in terms of their color production. I am shooting in the natural mode on the Honor Magic V5, and sometimes it is a little bit more saturated, but it's not a dramatic difference. It's not like the Oppo Find N5. The biggest difference between these two is Honor is prioritizing a brighter shot. It just feels like the exposure is turned up just a little bit. And I do intentionally say a little bit. This is not some dramatic difference. And if I had to use one phone over the other, it's not really going to bother me either way. They're both going to take very, very pleasing, good shots. If I had to say which one I preferred, I do lean towards that more natural lighting on the Galaxy Z Fold 7 for the primary sensor. For the ultra wide, things are actually even closer. So close, in fact, that I don't even think that it's worth spending a ton of time on this category. They look remarkably, remarkably similar. We can just happily call that a draw. When it comes to the telephoto, I think the Samsung actually holds up better than you would think, but there is absolutely no way on planet Earth that I can give them this category. The Honor Magic V5 has a better sensor, and it just retains more detail. Even if it is a little bit brighter and sometimes a little bit more colorful, that level of detail difference is just too much to possibly overcome. Honor is definitely winning that category. When it comes to video performance, things are, again, pretty close, but I do think Samsung has a slight edge here. It basically looks exactly like my S25 Ultra's video, which is like my primary camera for shooting B-roll on this channel. Even in lower light, more challenging scenarios, color is maintained. It doesn't get super duper noisy like a lot of foldables. The Honor Magic V5 does a really good job, but I feel like things start to degrade just a little bit in those challenging scenarios. Still very, very good, but I gotta give the nod there to Samsung. So by my count, we gave the primary to the Samsung. We said ultra wide was a draw. We said tele was the Magic V5, and then video I gave to Samsung. So I think that puts Samsung in total ahead by one single solitary category. Now here's the beautiful thing about this. This does not actually tell you what phone is better for you, because everyone is going to have a different level of priority for different things. For me, just as an example, battery life is only important up to a certain level, and once a phone fulfills that, anything beyond that is the realm of diminished returns. So while it's really cool that the Honor Magic V5 has amazing battery life, going to bed with 15% battery isn't any different for me than going to bed with 40% battery. I made it through the day with both, so it just isn't really relevant. For you, that might be the most important factor, and because of that, that might have Honor winning by a landslide. But again, it's up to you to decide what matters the most. For me, it's the interaction with the phone. It's the software experience, my comfortability, my familiarity, my frustration level with the software. That is my most important thing. And that's why my sim is in the Z Fold 7. But again, like I keep saying, this is subjective and you can have different priorities. Hopefully this is at least somewhat entertaining and or illuminating for those of you looking at these two phones. Guys, give me your thoughts in the comments down below. Subscribe for more content like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.